I was in the middle of reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed across the screen, making me pause. We didn't talk much these days, so seeing her call during work hours was unusual. "Robin, honey," Mom's voice came through with that familiar tone she used when she wanted something. "Your father and I need to have a serious conversation with you. Can you come over after work?" I glanced at my calendar. At 28, I'd built a comfortable life for myself, complete with a demanding job that usually kept me busy well into the evening. But something in Mom's voice made me reconsider my usual excuses. "Sure, I can stop by around 6, I replied, already wondering what this was about. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual. When I pulled into the familiar driveway, I noticed my sister's car wasn't there. That was odd. Marianne usually hung around the house most evenings. The house felt smaller than I remembered, though I'd only moved out 4 years ago. Mom directed me to sit on the couch while she perched on the edge of her favorite armchair. "We need to talk about your sister," Mom began, exchanging glances with Dad. "What about Marianne?" I asked, though I had a feeling I knew where this was going. Mom sighed dramatically. "Well, she's been having trouble finding work since graduation. It's been 2 years now, and she's 24, we're getting worried." I nodded slowly. My sister had graduated from a prestigious college, something our parents never let anyone forget, but hadn't managed to land what she considered a suitable position yet. "Maybe she could start with something entry-level?" I suggested carefully. "Build up some experience and work her way up?" "That's how most people—" No, Mom cut me off, shaking her head vigorously. "Your sister went to Carleton College. She can't just take any job that comes along. She needs something appropriate." Dad cleared his throat. "She's got potential, Robin. She just needs the right opportunity." I sat there, watching them exchange meaningful looks. I knew what was coming next. "We were hoping," Mom said, leaning forward, "that maybe you could help. You must have some connections by now, people who could help your sister get started in a proper career?" I looked between their expectant faces and sighed. "I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can ask around, see if any of my friends or colleagues know of any openings." 2 days after the conversation with my parents, I scrolled through my phone contacts until I found James Miller's number. We'd been good friends in college, and he'd gone on to become quite successful, founding a tech startup that had really taken off in the past year. "Robin, long time no hear," his cheerful voice came through the speaker. "How've you been?" "Hey James, I'm doing well. Listen, I actually have a favor to ask," I said, getting straight to the point. "My sister's looking for work, and I remembered you mentioned your company was hiring?" "Oh yeah, we're actually expanding pretty quickly. Always looking for young talent," James replied. "What's her background?" I filled him in on Marianne's credentials, carefully leaving out the 2-year employment gap. "Sure, I can take a look," he said. "Have her send her resume to my email. If there's a good fit, we'll definitely consider her." "Thanks, James. I really appreciate it." After hanging up, I immediately called Marianne. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "What?" she answered, sounding annoyed. "Hey, I might have found something for you," I said, trying to keep my voice upbeat. "My friend James runs this really innovative tech startup. They're looking for people, and he said he'd take a look at your resume." There was a long pause on the other end. "Whatever," Marianne finally responded, her voice dripping with disinterest. "I'm kind of busy right now. I'll send it when I get around to it." "The sooner the better," I pressed. "These positions tend to fill quickly." "I said I'll do it when I'm done with my personal stuff," she snapped and hung up. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Here I was trying to help her, and this was the response I got? But that was just the beginning. After my visit to my parents' house, Mom started calling almost daily. It was a strange shift. We'd barely talked before, and now suddenly she wanted to know everything about my life. "How's work going, honey?" she'd ask. "Are they paying you well?" That apartment of yours must be expensive. And inevitably, every conversation would end with, "Oh, by the way, I hate to ask, but could you spare $100? Just until next week. Or we're a little short on the electric bill this month." Each time, I'd sigh and transfer the money. It wasn't much, and I could afford it, but something about these new daily calls and constant requests made me uneasy. Still, they were my parents, and I told myself this was just temporary, until Marianne found a job. Along with the daily phone calls, Mom started inviting me to family dinners more frequently. "You're always so busy with work," she'd say. "Family should come first, Robin. Join us for dinner on Sunday." These dinners became a weekly ritual, but they all followed the same script. I'd barely get through the door before Mom would launch into her favorite topic, Marianne's latest accomplishments. "Your sister had 5 interviews this week," Mom announced one Sunday, beaming as she passed me the mashed potatoes. 5. "Can you believe how hard she's working?" Dad nodded approvingly. "That's our girl, always giving it her all." "Oh, and she's taking Spanish classes now," Mom continued, hardly pausing for breath. 3 times a week. Plus these amazing personal development seminars. The instructor says she has incredible potential." I pushed food around my plate, memories flooding back as I half listened to their endless praise of Marianne. It had always been like this, for as long as I could remember. I was 4 when Marianne was born. The day they brought her home from the hospital, it was like a switch flipped in our family. Suddenly, everything revolved around my baby sister. My artwork disappeared from the fridge, replaced by Marianne's first scribbles. My academic achievements became background noise to Marianne's every milestone. The memory of my 10th birthday party still stings. I'd invited my whole class, but when Marianne threw a tantrum because she wanted to blow out my candles, Mom and Dad let her do it. "Don't be selfish, Robin," they'd scolded when I started crying. "She's just a little girl." That pattern continued throughout our childhood. If anything went wrong, I was blamed. When 8-year-old Marianne broke Mom's favorite vase while running through the house, I got grounded for not watching her properly. When she failed a test in middle school, somehow it was my fault for not helping her study, never mind that I had my own exams to prepare for. From the time I started high school, my parents made it clear they wouldn't be able to help me with tuition. "We need to save for Marianne's education," they'd explain. "She's showing such promise in her advanced classes." So I threw myself into my studies. While Marianne went to dance classes and summer camps, I worked part-time jobs and stayed up late writing scholarship essays. When I finally got the full ride to State University, Mom's only comment was, "Well, at least that's taken care of. Now we can focus on getting Marianne into Carleton." College was exhausting. Between maintaining my scholarship GPA, working 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore, and picking up extra shifts waiting tables on weekends, I barely had time to sleep. But it was worth it. The day I moved out of my parents' house and into my own apartment was the first time I felt like I could breathe freely. Sometimes I wonder if my parents ever noticed how hard I worked, how much I achieved on my own. But sitting here at another family dinner, listening to them gush about Marianne's latest self-improvement kick, I already know the answer. 2 weeks after my conversation with James, Marianne finally got around to sending her resume. To my relief, James saw potential in her application and offered her a position in the marketing department. I found out about her acceptance not from Marianne herself, but from an excited phone call from Mom. "Your sister got the job," she practically shouted through the phone. "Isn't it wonderful? She's so talented," they recognized her potential right away. No mention of my connection to James, of course. No acknowledgement that I'd helped make it happen. But I was used to that by now. The weeks turned into months, and before I knew it, Christmas was approaching. Mom's invitation to holiday dinner came with the usual guilt trip. "You haven't spent Christmas with us in years, Robin," she reminded me. "Marianne will be so disappointed if you're not there." I doubted that, but I agreed anyway. Maybe things would be different now that Marianne had settled into her career. Maybe she'd finally grown up a little. I should have known better. Christmas Day found me sitting in my old spot at the dining room table, watching as Marianne presented her carefully wrapped gifts to our parents. Mom gasped as she opened a designer handbag. "Oh, sweetheart, it's gorgeous," she exclaimed, hugging it to her chest. "And with your first few paychecks too, you're so thoughtful." Dad's gift was next, an expensive watch that made his eyes light up. "That's my girl," he said proudly. Always knowing exactly what to get. My presents, a carefully chosen book for Dad about his favorite historical period and a handmade photo album for Mom featuring family pictures I'd spent weeks collecting and organizing, sat unopened on the side table. They'd get to them eventually, I knew, with polite thanks and quick glances before they returned to admiring Marianne's selections. Marianne barely acknowledged my presence throughout the entire dinner. The few times our eyes met, she quickly looked away, as if making eye contact might obligate her to express gratitude for the job I'd helped her get. The closest we came to actual conversation was when she asked me to pass the gravy. But life went on. Mom's daily calls now included detailed reports of Marianne's corporate successes, each one presented as if my sister had single-handedly revolutionized the company. Marianne gave a presentation at the quarterly conference, Mom would gush. Everyone was so impressed. They even asked her to lead a breakout session. Or, "Your sister just got back from her first business trip to Chicago. Her boss told her she has real leadership potential." I listened to these updates while sitting at my own desk, in my own office, where I'd earned my own successes without anyone's help or connections. But of course, those achievements weren't worth mentioning. They never had been. "Oh, and did I tell you?" Mom continued one day, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Marianne's been put in charge of their new social media campaign. She's so natural at it, everyone just loves her ideas." I made appropriate noises of interest while finishing up my own quarterly report, the one that had earned me a bonus last month. Not that I'd bothered telling my parents about that. What would be the point? The call came on a rainy Tuesday evening, just as I was preparing dinner. I sat down at my kitchen counter, listening to the familiar sound of rain against my windows as Mom detailed their financial troubles. Property taxes had gone up. The car needed repairs. Dad's reduced income wasn't covering their basic expenses anymore. "We're just not sure what to do," she finished, her voice cracking slightly. "I know it's a lot to ask, but we were hoping maybe you could help us through this rough patch." I stared at the half-chopped vegetables on my cutting board, thinking about my own finances. I had a good salary, lived modestly, and had managed to save a decent amount. Still, what she was asking. "How much do you need?" I heard myself asking. There was a pause on the other end. "Well, maybe $1,000 a month? Just until things get better?" After a long moment, I agreed. The monthly transfers became part of my routine, like paying rent or utilities. Mom's gratitude was effusive at first, but soon the money was just expected, another regular deposit in their account. Meanwhile, family gatherings continued to be exercises in patience. Marianne would sweep in, usually late, wearing designer clothes and carrying the latest iPhone. She'd spend the entire evening holding court, talking about her latest work triumphs. I sat quietly, mentally calculating how much of my monthly parent support payment could have gone toward my own future instead. As months passed, Mom's requests grew. First it was an extra 100 here, 200 there. Just this once, she'd say, but the exceptions became more frequent. Eventually, she worked up to suggesting that 1,000 wasn't quite cutting it anymore. "Everything's getting so expensive these days," she sighed during one of our calls. "And with your father's hours still reduced, do you think you could manage 1,500? It would make such a difference." I agreed, though something twisted in my stomach when, 2 weeks later, Mom casually mentioned she'd reduced her own work hours to part-time. During one of our increasingly rare private conversations, I finally worked up the courage to ask about Marianne's contribution to the family finances. After all, she was making good money now, money she seemed happy to spend on luxury apartments and designer clothes. Mom's response was immediate and defensive. "Oh, we'd never ask Marianne for money," she said, sounding shocked at the very suggestion. "She's investing in herself right now, personal development courses, networking events, building her professional image. That's very important for her career, you know. Life has a funny way of revealing truths when you least expect them." I was sitting in my favorite cafe one Wednesday afternoon, taking advantage of my lunch break to catch up on some reading, when I heard a familiar voice. "Robin, what a coincidence." I looked up to see James, my old college friend and Marianne's boss, standing by my table with a coffee in hand. He pulled up a chair without waiting for an invitation, grinning broadly. "I'm glad I ran into you," he said, settling in. "I'd been meaning to call and congratulate you about Marianne's promotion. She's really knocked it out of the park these past few months." I felt my coffee cup freeze halfway to my mouth. "Promotion?" James's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, we made her head of digital marketing last week." "She didn't tell you?" "I figured since you're her sister." He paused, looking slightly uncomfortable. "Oh, by the way, Marianne invited me to her celebration party at your parents' house this Saturday. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it. Could you tell her I'm sorry and pass along my congratulations?" I forced a smile, trying to hide my shock. "Sure, I'll let her know." James glanced at his watch and stood up. "Sorry to run, but I've got a meeting in 15 minutes. Great seeing you, Robin." With that, he was gone, leaving me sitting there with my now cold coffee and a growing sense of disbelief. I sat there for a long time, my mind racing. A celebration at my parents' house. The same parents I was supporting with $1,500 every month. The same sister who only had her job because of my connection. The same house where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners listening to endless praise of Marianne's accomplishments. My hands were shaking slightly as I dialed Mom's number. "Hi, honey," she answered, sounding distracted. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I was thinking of coming over for dinner on Saturday. It's been a while since we had a family meal." There was a long pause on the other end. "Oh, Saturday?" Mom's voice had that high-pitched quality it got when she was making excuses. "I'm so sorry, dear, but your father and I already have plans. We're visiting some friends that evening." I took a deep breath, then played my card. "No problem," I said casually. "How about Friday then? I could bring takeout from that Chinese place Dad likes." I could practically hear Mom's panic through the phone. Friday would be when they'd be decorating for the party, hanging streamers, arranging furniture, preparing food. Of course they wouldn't want me to see any of that. "Friday's not good either," Mom replied quickly, her voice climbing even higher. "I have a doctor's appointment. And then there's the grocery shopping, and I need to clean the house, and..." The excuses piled up, each one more transparent than the last. I sat there listening, remembered all the times I'd answered their calls for help, all the monthly payments, all the years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one they could always count on. Back at my office, I couldn't focus on work. On impulse, I opened Facebook and searched for Marianne's profile. Nothing came up. Frowning, I tried again, then realized what had happened. She'd blocked me. "Hey, Sarah," I called to my friend and coworker in the next cubicle. "Could you do me a quick favor? Can you look up my sister's Facebook page?" A moment later, we were looking at Marianne's profile. There it was, in full color, multiple posts about her upcoming celebration. "Finally getting the recognition I deserve," read one caption. "All those years of hard work paying off. Self-made, success, boss lady." I felt sick reading the comments. Self-made? The job she only got because of my connection with James? The position she could only take because our parents supported her while she was finding herself after college? The promotion she was celebrating in a house partially paid for with my money? The rest of the week passed in a blur. I barely slept, my mind churning with years of memories, sacrifices, and one-sided support. By Saturday evening, I'd made my decision. I pulled up outside my parents' house at 8:30 p.m. The street was lined with cars, and I could see lights blazing through the windows, hear the muffled sound of music and laughter. I felt oddly calm as I pulled out my phone and dialed James's number. "Hey, James," I said when he picked up. "Remember how you couldn't make it to Marianne's party? Well, I'm outside my parents' house right now, and I think you might want to hear something. Would you mind staying on the line?" Sure," he replied, sounding confused. I put the phone on speaker, turned up the volume, and walked up to the front door. The key I still had from all those family dinners turned smoothly in the lock. The party was in full swing. Decorative streamers hung from the ceiling, a congratulations banner stretched across the living room wall. Marianne stood in the center of an admiring circle, wearing a new designer dress, champagne glass in hand. The room fell silent as I stepped inside. Mom's face went pale. Dad suddenly became very interested in his shoes. Marianne's expression shifted from shock to anger. "What exactly are we celebrating tonight?" I asked, my voice carrying in the sudden quiet. Marianne recovered first. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her face flushed. "You weren't invited. This is a party for family and close friends only." "Family?" I repeated. "I'm your sister. And I was the one who helped you get that job." "That doesn't mean anything," Marianne snapped. "You're not part of my inner circle. You've never been supportive of my success." I turned to Mom, who was wringing her hands nervously. "Is that why I wasn't invited? Because I'm not supportive enough? What about the $1,500 I send you every month?" Mom lifted her chin, a familiar defensive look crossing her face. "Well, we won't be needing that anymore. Marianne has a wonderful new position now, with an excellent salary. She'll be helping us from now on." I stared at my mother, her words still ringing in my ears, when Marianne stepped forward, her face flushed with champagne and anger. "You want to talk about how I got this job?" she sneered. "Fine, let's talk about it. So what if you knew James? I'm the one who earned this promotion. I'm the one who worked hard and impressed everyone. You don't think you should at least acknowledge," I started, but she cut me off. "Acknowledge what?" "God, you've always been like this, so desperate for attention, for credit." Marianne's voice rose, sharp with years of stored contempt. "You know what? I've always been ashamed to be related to you. Always walking around in your cheap clothes, buried in your books, looking like some kind of scarecrow. Do you even own a decent dress? You've been an embarrassing nerd and a slob since we were kids." The room went dead quiet. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Someone's champagne glass clinked nervously against a table. I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Hey, James," I said clearly into the phone I was still holding. "Did you catch all that?" Every word, his voice came through the speaker, crystal clear in the silent room. "And I'm absolutely appalled." Marianne's face went from red to white in an instant. I turned the phone screen toward her so she could see James's name on the call. "Hello, Marianne," James continued, his voice hard. "I expect to see you in my office first thing Monday morning. Consider your promotion cancelled, and I'm giving you 2 weeks to find new employment. This kind of behavior is completely unacceptable in our company." Marianne's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Mom rushed forward, hands outstretched. "Robin, honey, surely we can." "No," I cut her off. "We can't. And as of tomorrow, you can stop expecting those monthly deposits. I'm done." I looked around the room, at the expensive decorations my money had probably helped pay for. "Enjoy your party. I hope it was worth it." I walked out, closing the door on Marianne's angry screams and Mom's pleading calls. They showed up at my apartment the next day, pounding on the door until my neighbor threatened to call security. I didn't answer. They tried again the next day, and the next. I blocked their numbers, filtered their emails to spam. 6 months have passed since that night. Through mutual friends, I've heard the aftermath. Marianne moved back home after losing her job, her fancy apartment no longer affordable. She tried to find another position in marketing, but James's reference, or lack thereof, closed a lot of doors. Mom's back to working full-time at her old job, now that my monthly support has dried up. Dad tried reaching out once through a cousin, saying they were struggling without my help, but I blocked that number too. Yesterday, I got a promotion at work. As I sat in my office, looking at the congratulatory email, I thought about the party I'd walked into 6 months ago. I thought about writing to tell them about my success, but then I remembered, I don't need their validation anymore. I never did.